Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Every Rockie Ever, a Colorado Rockies podcast celebrating 30 years of this team's history, much more than the actual organization is doing at times, but that's why we're here. I'm your host, Skyler Timmins, and joined always here by my older brother, Dustin.
Hey.
We're both wearing our Isotopes hats. He's wearing his Mariachis one, and I've just got the classic Isotopes A. So we all catch up here, bringing the show back. And as always, we're part of the Rocky Mountain Rooftop Network, proud member of the Fans First Sports Network. Coming out with episodes every other Wednesday is the goal, or occasionally Thursdays, depending on scheduling and all that jazz. But we've got a fun episode today. We're titling this the Jamey episode, talking about three Jameys in Rockies history: Jamey Wright, Jamie Moyer, and Jamey Carroll. So it worked out. We usually try to keep these episodes short, and three guys that they won't take as much time, right, Dustin?
Yeah, and two of them spelled Jamey, and then that old timer that spelled it Jamie.
And there you go. So it should be a fun one. Interesting career paths for all three of these guys in their time with the Rockies. Notable little moments and things, but I think we'll go ahead and kick it off here with Dustin. This, in previous episodes, you've mentioned that this is your guy, one of your favorite idols as a Rocky, just a player that you always loved in Jamey Wright. And before I'll have you jump into his stats first, and then have you answer the question of what you love about Jamey Wright. What was so special about him?
All right, so we got Jamey Wright, the tall, lanky, right-handed pitcher who's 6'6", from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. He was drafted by the Rockies in the first round, the 28th overall pick of the 1993 draft, straight out of high school, out of Westmore High School in Oklahoma City. He ended up making his major league debut July 3rd as a member of the Colorado Rockies. He pitched against the San Francisco Giants. It was a very good outing. 6 innings, 4 hits, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks, 1 earned run. With the Rockies, he was a number 19. I remember his number 21, and he had another stint where he's number 16. But his time with the Rockies, he ended up spending 6 years, from that 1996 season to the 1999 season, and then he came. He made a lot of stops. He had a 19-year career, and he made a lot of different stops in Milwaukee and St. Louis, Kansas City. Went back to the Rockies in 2004, 2005, then to the Giants, to the Rangers, to the Royals, to Cleveland, to Seattle, to the Dodgers, to Tampa Bay, and back to the Dodgers. So a really impressive career there towards the end, halfway through his career, and they shifted him to a reliever role. And he had a few really good years as a solid middle reliever. And I was always pumped with the Rockies. He ended up having 35 wins, 52 losses. But we got to remember, he pitched in those pre-Humidor days. And those guys, it was just a slugfest. Career 5.40 ERA with the Rockies, 791 innings. And I look at his stats. He had more walks than strikeouts in his career with the Rockies. And I always kind of remember that being one of his issues. But those were his stats. He ended up retiring after the 2014 season as a member of the Dodgers.
So got around for quite a bit. It's pretty interesting.
And actually, his last game was against the Rockies.
There you go. It ended where it began.
Yep.
And it looks like retired in that 2014. It did look like, or that was his last stint in the big leagues.
Yeah.
Signed with the Rangers and then was released during that spring training. And then, eventually did retire in 2016. Signed as a free agent with the Dodgers. Never did anything else after that. So that was his last. No, 2016. So from 1996 to 2016, he was active in professional baseball, which you don't see that as much anymore, especially for, didn't seem like Jamey Wright was really that big name type of guy ever around the league. And it's why did you gravitate towards him? What was it about him that you just gravitated towards him?
So by the time in 1996 when he made his major league debut, at that time I'm 11 years old, really getting into baseball, paying more attention to the Rockies. I had card collection at the time, and I remember getting Jamey Wright's card and seeing him pitch, and I thought like, man, that guy, I feel like I could be like him. He's a tall right-hander. Uh, he had the cool little sideburns that were really big at the time, and just he did really well in the minors. He was a really good minor league pitcher for the Rockies, and I always just thought, man, this guy, he was a first round pick. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not that he was just some guy. He's a number one pick or first round pick, and you know, you always think like, man, those poor guys. Like you're sending them out to the Wolves there at Coors Field in those mid late '90s, but he ended up having a good career. But it was just he was that sinker ball pitcher. He wasn't blowing the ball past people, and I remember Jamey Wright. Remember more of his good games than his bad games, but I do remember, man, it was all over the place all the time, working around with traffic all the time. But he's a guy that I always wanted to be. I imitate his windup, his just the way he was, because I was a tall pitcher as well. And he was always a guy that I rooted for, even when he was not a Colorado Rocky.
Yeah, and that's one thing we typically just kind of forget about guys when they go to other teams, or we actively root against them, especially if they end up with like the Giants or the Dodgers. But there are those few that, I guess, like for Jamey Wright, for you, that you can still root for, regardless of the uniform, because what he meant to you and whatnot, which is a pretty cool thing to see. And there's again, I don't remember him much again because I didn't really start getting into it until I was in 6th grade. So everything before 2007 is kind of foggy for me, of Josh foggy for me, in terms of remembering guys. But I do remember just even since then of what he meant to you. When Jamey Wright would always pop up, you'd always kind of perk up, or if we'd go to a game again and the Dodgers are there, and he comes into pitch, you were always kind of like, oh man, he's still going. And you were always excited to see him come into pitch.
I actually remember a game that we saw him, and I was like, "Oh, I wish I could talk to him," and fanboying over Jamey Wright, like probably one of his only big time fans.
Yeah, I think it might have been one of those games against the Dodgers, and you and I did the little fantasy broadcast booth there at Coors Field, and so it probably was one of those games that we were at, and he was walking around there, warming up in the outfield pregame during batting practice and stuff. But it's cool to see how he was able to turn a fairly solid start with the Rockies pre-Humidor, and then turn it into a 19-year career where he was still very solid and successful post Coors Field, post Rockies, and even came back for a small stint.
Yeah, and I remember when he went back to the Rockies, I was like, "Oh man, maybe he'll." I don't know. It's not like he was going to save the season, but I was like, man, just like relive the good times and something. But it unfortunately didn't work out like that. But I was just pumped that he was back with the Rockies, and once again, I could, fantasize. Yeah, I'm him. I can be him.
And so, what was it about? I guess we can get into his windup specifically that what you tried to imitate with his windup?
Well, I think more than anything, it's because I was tall and lanky,
Mhm,
and so him just being that build, and I'd always think like that's a guy that I could be. He had a simple windup. It was well, nothing spectacular, nothing unique. It was just that's what I'd see, and I'm gonna be him. I could do that. He was a sinker ball pitcher,
mhm,
and kind of some of those first that that mold that the Rockies have always had of getting that sinker ball going and getting the ground balls.
mhm,
And I don't know, for some reason, I always thought like, man, he could probably hit some dingers as a pitcher, but he only had one career home run. And I was like, oh, so it was never anything like it was all as a little kid how we build these athletes up, these players.
mhm,
When now that we're older and we're looking back, we're like, ew, that he wasn't that great. It wasn't anything spectacular. But in my
mhm,
mind, as an 11-year-old, 12-year-old boy, he meant everything to me. And I had tons of his cards when he was with um, down in the minors. That was everything to me.
mhm,
This guy, this player. Um, I remember I had an Asheville tourist card of his when he was in New Haven, and for some weird reasons, I'm like, yo, this is my guy. That's just what he was.
mhm. And I think that's the big thing. Like a lot of Rockies pitchers, he wasn't spectacular, but for the most part, a just fairly solid guy that could go out there, eat some innings, give you a chance to win, or just go out there and just kind of be that. They said eat innings and open up room, and then get moved to the bullpen, provide some relief there. Uh, Kind of that classic journeyman status that a lot of pitchers go through in Major League Baseball history. There's only so many, Randy Johnsons or current guys today like a Garrett Cole and some of those top of the line Max Scherzers, Justin Verlanders, and the majority of Major League pitchers are guys like Jamey Wright, who some way somehow just build a 2-decade career for themselves in the big leagues and contribute wherever they go.
Yeah, and that says a lot about his that potential that he had, and making that adjustment too of finding a niche. Once he kind of honed in and throw strikes,
Hmm.
throw strikes, and you'll have success.
Look up some. Wasn't he one of the first, or am I getting my things mixed up? Of one of the first Rockies pitchers to have an ERA below a certain number? Or is that somebody else?
I would probably think that was somebody else
Yeah,
because
probably.
he had in all of his Rockies years, it was well above 4. He hovered roughly around 5. We'll say, well, with his whole time added all together, uh, it was a 5.40 ERA.
Hmm. Anyways, there's a lot of those guys like that. I know there's somebody like that. I can't remember who it was, but yeah. So Jamey Wright just paving it out. May not have been the greatest star in Rockies history. Probably doesn't rank very high on the Rockies pantheon of starting pitchers, but still a solid contributing member.
But a solid answer for any immaculate inning. That
Yeah, yeah, we
you know.
got to start putting him on the grid
Oh yeah,
because that's what I that's what I've been trying to do more lately is try to build it in of, well, I don't know many outside players. How can I just fill it with former Rockies as best I can? It's
well
always
that's
good.
that's what's fun of games like that. I always talk about the baseball name game and stuff, but this immaculate inning thing is really cool to kind of get those guys. I watched a lot of those TikTok guys these brainiacs, the main journalists, and they strive to get the lowest percentage guys chosen, and it's really cool, and it's even better. I saw some that were just strictly Rockies, and I was like, yes, that's what I like to see. But one last thing that to wrap Jamey Wright up is, uh, found an old article, and he was asked, about his perseverance in the game. And this was his quote. This is quote: "The reason I did it was because I love the game and I love to be on that mound." Wright said, "I wish any baseball fan, any baseball lover got the opportunity to be on that mound and know what it feels like to stand in front of 50,000 people. I'm starting to cry because I loved it that much. I loved it that much." And then I get all emotional. But that was that guy that I look at, and he was a grinder.
Yeah, that's what they love. That's what a typical Rocky guy that grinds and gets through everything. And let's see, I was trying to stalk him on the internet here, and from what I can tell, for the most part, just being a dad again these days. Like a lot of these guys, kind of being a dad, helping with probably coach his sons and everything. Finding him here on Instagram, following teaching his kids, helping his boys, and just being a dad and everything. So it's good to see when they're in their bio, it says loving husband, 3-time father. Those are the first things he puts. And then
Yes,
19-year
sir.
MLB vet. So,
Yeah, just a little thing there.
but good for him. Glad to see at least he's continued to just keep on keeping on, being a good dude. And we always appreciate guys like that to just see that they're doing well in their post playing days. just being regular dudes. But moving on now from Jamey Wright, we'll move on to another pitcher named Jamey, and who's still like at least another another at least maybe around 10 years older than Dustin is right now. And when he pitched for the Colorado Rockies in the old man, Jamie Moyer, pitching for the Rockies in
Oh man,
2012. This is an interesting one to talk about. And well, first I'll throw it to Dustin now for Jamie Moyer's career path and how he ended up here.
Jamie Moyer, the left-handed pitcher, born in 1962 from Pennsylvania, drafted by the Chicago Cubs in the 1984 draft, and made his major league debut in 1986, and made his way to the Rockies in the 2012 season. He was a one-time All-Star and a 2008 World Series champ. But Jamie Moyer, who went from the Cubs to the Rangers to the Cardinals to the Orioles to the Red Sox to the Mariners, is where a lot of us remember him. And then with the Phillies, where he won a World Series, and then that dreadful season of 2012 as a 49-year-old, throwing little frisbees, little dog treats, to the big dogs, and ay caramba. So in that one year, the short time he was with the Rockies, he went 2-5. We'll talk about that, one of those wins, and he actually got 36 strikeouts
Yeah.
versus 18 walks, but it was a bloated 5.70 ERA as a Colorado Rocky, and thankfully he ended up, going off to greener pastures after his time with the Rockies, as he then tried to, he got released by the Rockies halfway through the season. He signed with the Orioles, but then 2 weeks later was released, signed on with the Blue Jays, and then was released a couple weeks later. So that was it for him in the majors. Um, Holy cow. Just even going through that, that 2012 season was an absolute bonkers of a year
Mm-hmm.
with the Rockies. You look at the starting pitchers, and Jamie Moyer. What is going on here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and being at Coors Field, and you knew that this is not good. This is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Piggyback systems, 4-man rotation,
Oh,
75 pitch limits, injuries galore. Jeff Francis comes in and pitches the most innings after joining the team in June. Yeah. 2012 and 2023 are 2 seasons we will purge from our memories forever.
oh man.
But there were some notable things with Jamie Moyer because I remember following that story, and no, they signed him to the minor league contract, invite to spring training. You're like, okay, well, this is just a good like PR story. We both like the movie The Rookie, and even then, that guy had some longevity still to his life because he wasn't 49 years old. But yeah, it seemed like that kind of thing of, oh, it's just a publicity stunt. Rocky's just trying to get some good PR or something, a good story. They love their stories. But then it's announced like, hey, he's going to be your number 2 starter to start the season. And you're like, what?
Yeesh.
So he makes the roster, and I wrote an article about this over at purpleroad.com in 2021 titled That Time the Rockies Had an Old Man Pitch. And so I familiarized myself with this story pretty good because I just love it so much, just how absurd it is. And it's just so funny to me. So he signs in January 2012, and he eventually makes the opening day roster spot. This is a guy that his fastball doesn't go higher than 80 miles an hour. Whatever other pitches he has a slow ball and a slower ball is pretty much what he throws. So he starts the second game of the season, and he takes a 7-3 loss against the Astros. And this would begin his quest to become the oldest pitcher to win a baseball game in Major League history. Next attempt came on April 12th, 2012, facing Madison Bumgarner and the San Francisco Giants. And bad defense, bad offense, and he gets stuck with another loss. They lost by a score of 4-2, so not terrible. And so it keeps going. Next attempt, it comes against San Diego at home at Coors Field against the San Diego Padres. And this is on April 17th, 2012. And this is when he makes history. They beat the Padres 5-3, and he becomes the oldest pitcher in Major League Baseball history to win a game at 49 years old, at 49 years and 150 days old, replacing Jack Quinn. And there's an immaculate grid answer for you. Jack Quinn,
Yeah.
not much info on him, but he not only got the win, he pitched 7 innings, allowing just 2 runs on 6 hits and striking out 1, which was Cameron Maybin. He had 12 ground balls in that game, and about a month later, he beats his own record. On May 12th, 2012, he gave up 1 run in 6 1/3 innings against the Diamondbacks at Coors Field. He also became the oldest player ever to drive in a run. So he had an RBI, he drove in a run, and became the oldest player once again, breaking his own record to become the oldest player to ever win a baseball game. So pretty interesting. If nothing else, cool that he was able to set those records.
It's just like that movie with Bernie Mac where he's coming back,
Mr. 3000.
Mr. 3000. But it was just like, but then you hear that sentence, you're like, wow, at 49, he could still do that?
Mm-hmm.
6 1/3 inning, that, dang.
Well, here's the cool thing. So he made 10 starts in total before he was released in June. He pitched at least 5 innings in all but one of them. He had a mixture of a blazing 78 mile per hour fastball and off speed slower than that. So he induced a lot of weak contact, got a lot of ground balls. He struck out 36 while only walking 18. So He was that crafty old. He was basically the old guy that was in Major League.
Oh, he was Ed Harris.
He was.
Yeah, what's that stuff? Yeesh. Haven't got an arm like you. Someday you will too. But that's Jamie Moyer. And oh man, I just got all the bunch of anxiety just remembering. And oh yeah, cool. But just again remembering what the setup was for that 2012 season, the piggybacks and this old man going out there and still. But then it as you're talking though, it is cool that he did have a little bit of success, but overall his whole career, that's what it was.
Mhm.
And I always root for those guys because I turned into one of those where I couldn't just gas it past people. You actually have to pitch, hitting spots, working up and down, side to side, mixing up your pitches and stuff. And so that's, I bet Jamie Moyer, they call him up right now and he's ready to go. That old wing's ready to lob him in there. Maybe that guy would be a great BP throw, the home run derby thrower.
Yeah.
Boom. Especially if it's Giancarlo Stanton ready to rock and roll.
Yeah. So in that one start, he didn't go at least 5 innings. It came against the Marlins, and this was the shortest outing of the year. He gave up 4 runs in 5 of his final 6 starts with the Rockies. So sure, he was giving them 5 innings, but they weren't very good innings. But in 3 1/3 innings pitched against the Marlins in that season, he gave up 6 runs on 9 hits, capped off by a Giancarlo Stanton grand slam that I still think about to this day, and I'm still not sure that thing ever landed. They found some sort of like ball-looking thing on Mars once. They sent a picture that looked like a baseball. I'm pretty sure that was Giancarlo Stanton's grand slam.
Jeez.
It rammed into the scoreboard and broke the Marlins scoreboard with how hard that thing was
scoreboard.
hit.
R.I.P.
So when I think of Jamie Moyer, that's all that consumes that idea is that grand slam.
Nobody even had time to turn their necks, turn their heads because it was out that fast.
Mm-hmm.
Poof.
Could you imagine if he had hit it at Coors Field?
That thing would have ended up in Fort Collins. It would have ended up in Greeley. They would have been calling on from NORAD saying, "Why is there a projectile flying out of Coors Field? It is now in orbit."
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Now, Giancarlo, he's hit some at Coors Field. All right. But if it was that same one, holy cow. That's all I remember is Jamie Moyer getting lit up against the Marlins.
Yeah. He'd get roughed up one more time at the end of May by the Cincinnati Reds. He'd give up 7 runs on 7 hits, gave up 4 home runs in a 7-5 loss. And then shortly after that, the Rockies designated for him for assignment and released him. And Jim Tracy, stated, "I just felt like that by sending him out there, we were compromising him and the team at that point," which you don't want to tarnish that guy's legacy because he did have a good, solid career, a memorable career, notable.
You don't want him to just be a laughing stock and, well, we can't just send him out there every game. And you're worried about this elderly man up there, and they got balls hitting off of the scoreboards, and it just wasn't any good anymore, Shim. Oh man, it's just crazy to think of those times. But it is a great guy. I remember never hearing any complaints from Jamie Moyer, being grateful to still be in the game. And I think he's just one of those guys that went about it the right way. And that's, these guys that do it the right way and they have that longevity, they adjust to the times and how they went. Now, was he an all-star? Yeah, no, he was once, but is he a Hall of Famer? No. Does he have some cool memorabilia in the Baseball Hall of Fame? Yes. But Jamie Moyer, that kept a lot of guys' hopes alive. Just, shoot, if Jamie Moyer can do it, maybe I'll keep grinding. You think now in today's game, pretty much the only guy with that kind of a feel is
You got Nelson Cruz now and Miguel Cabrera.
yeah, for those of the offensive guys, but pitching wise is Kyle Hendricks,
Rich Hill.
with Rich Hill, but those guys that aren't blazing the radar guns, but they're hitting their spots. Hendricks there with the Cubs, he's a mid 80s, lower 80s guy hitting the dots, working up and down, and you get that same kind of feel. Rich Hill dropping his arm to all these different angles, throwing now the frisbee, the sweepers and stuff. But Jamie Moyer was one of the last of his kind. Which is crazy. The stats of when he made his major league debut, he was still pitching against those old timers, Hall of Famers, and then when he finished, it was he was pitching against Bryce Harper making his debut and that kind of stuff.
And the cool thing too is one thing we see with the Rockies, they love their veteran mentorship, and Jamie Moyer was able to be that kind of guy. Not as long, but still able to kind of be there. Willeen Rosario, the baby bull, had a quote that said, "He's a guy that likes to fight. He likes to have fun. He enjoys playing. We can learn from him." And then Jim Tracy, again, another statement after they released him. There's no difference in the man. There's no difference in his will to compete. So the mind was willing, but the flesh was weak for Jamie Moyer.
For sure.
Still, just a fun, what a disaster of a move and absurd thing, but still, I just love that story and just love the idea of him pitching for the Rockies. So absurd.
He's in the record books.
Mm-hmm.
We can just wait for Bartolo Colon to come out of retirement and say, hey, see if he can break that one. But Jamie Moyer, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, and he went on, continue to do great, his charity work, being an analyst for, I think he did the Phillies. He's been an analyst for the Phillies, and recently inducted into the Seattle Mariners Hall of Fame. Past several years, I think like in past couple years, he was there doing a lot with the Moyer Foundation with his wife, being a grandfather and everything. So just a nice, solid dude. He'd be one of those kind of cool old guys you just kind of want to sit and chat baseball with.
Oh yeah, for long of his career and those players that he played against and played with throughout the span of his career, super interesting. I think that's he does a great job of what he does, and a lot of the charity work that a lot of these baseball players do, it's amazing stuff, and that's the stuff that's more important than baseball. And I think when they have that platform to be able to do good and help others, I think that's like what an athlete they should be, and making a big difference in people's lives.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, and he's still kicking, and you still got time, Dustin. You can catch up to him.
Ooh. I still got 12 years, so I could break his.
Yeah,
it'd be when I was 50. So give me 12 years. We'll see what state the Rockies are in then.
Yeah, you still got time, unless Ichiro decides to come out of retirement and become a pitcher. Come out back out.
He could do it.
He do it. If you ever seen him throw BP, he'll come in there and he'll sling it. Pew! Yeah, so that's Jamie Moyer, the old man wonder. He disappeared as mysteriously as he arrived, throwing 70 miles an hour, and then rode off into the sunset. Crazy stuff. That's how weird that 2012 season was for the Colorado Rockies. They had a 49-year-old as their number 2 starter.
That's what's mind-boggling.
Yeah. Just goes to say the desperate times call for desperate measures, and they're not very good measures for the Rockies in those desperate times. But good for him. that's going to move us on here to our last Jamey of this episode, a Rocktober hero of the 2007 team. Just a brief 2-year career with the Rockies. It's one little Jamey Carroll, who will round it out.
Jamie Carroll.
So take it away, Dustin.
He was a second baseman, third baseman, shortstop. He was just that utility guy in the infield. He was born in 1974 in Evansville, Indiana. He was drafted by the Montreal Expos in the 14th round of the 96 amateur draft out of the University of Evansville. He ended up making his debut in 2002 as a member of the Montreal Expos. And he ended up making stops. He played for Montreal, then came over to Colorado and played the 2006 season, which had a really good season. And then in the 2007 season, the Rocktober season, he was more that utility guy, platooning over with Kazmatsui at second base. And he ended up then being traded to Cleveland, then went over to the Dodgers, to Minnesota, and finished out his career with the Royals. So a solid 12-year career. Is always that middle infield, third base player. And, he'll go down. He'll always be remembered in Rockies history for what play there, Skyler?
Well, that would be the sacrifice fly to right field to score Matt Holliday, who did touch home plate in the 2007 game 163 wild card tiebreaker against the San Diego Padres.
And that's what I always think of Jamey Carroll, just being a hard-nosed player. In my baseball world, it's a dirtbag grinder, a dirty uniform. He's there, put him in whatever position, and he's going to give it 100%. He's going to drop down a sack bunt. He's going to move the runner over. He's going to get on base, try to steal or just cause chaos. And I just still remember that high pitch, and he just went with it, took it that way. That thing, I always think of him pushing the ball through the right side. And I remember when he put that ball in the air, and I said, that is not deep enough. That's not going to get us. And they still sent him. Oh, I was so nervous.
But it ended up. Yep. But don't ask Padres fans; they still deny it.
Nah.
But for some reason, Jamey Carroll seems like one of those guys that I thought he was a Rocky for longer, but just 2 seasons. And he just seems like one of those guys like, oh yeah, he probably was there for like 4 years. No, it was just 2.
Yeah, it was just a quick stint. And like we're saying, as we're looking back and looking at the stats, that 2000, they picked him up from the Nationals. Okay, picked him up real cheap, and he was a solid starting second baseman that 2006 season. Batted 300, had 10 steals, 36 RBI.
He led
hits.
He led all second basemen in fielding percentage that season. Had just a couple of errors. So yeah, he just seems like one of those guys of, oh yeah, he was around for a while, but just a flash of the pan. But 2007, he gets one of the most impactful at bats in Rockies history with that sac fly. And I know you mentioned he's those dirtbag grinders, because it was like him and Jeff Baker and some of those guys like Corey Sullivan, Ryan Spielborgs. They're in 2007, kind of leading that bench, and I can't remember. It's in that documentary, 21 Days. No, whatever. You can find that on YouTube. But they had the T-shirts. I can't remember what their Goon Squad or something like that. They had their T-shirts and kind of they lived up. They knew what their role was, and they performed it well. And he could have been one of those guys that maybe could have felt jaded or ripped off after that strong 2006 season, and then they bring in a second baseman to replace him for the most part, and He could probably feel slighted, but no, he still fills in his role with the team. And no, a consummate professional team player is what I think of with Jamey Carroll. That the team could still trust in an important situation with the game on the line. They could trust him to get the ball in play.
And that's what he was. He was a contact guy. Put the bat on the ball, slap it through somewhere. But I do remember I said, with the game on the line like this, and it's Jamey Carroll, like we're wanting the big bop, and he put the bat on the ball, and the rest is history, as they say. But he's a guy that throughout his solid hitter. He had solid years with these other teams that he went. He was a contributor. Um, and just a good guy, like you said. That team, the Jeff Baker and the Corey Sullivan, Brian Spilborgs, that group. It feels like that's something the Rockies have not they haven't had for a while, where there was a squad that, of course, in the Bud Black era, you got a different lineup every single day. But it was back then, it was, these are the dudes, and these are the guys that are going to go in, situational players, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Jamey Carroll fit that. And as you said, when they bring in Kaz Matsui, and it's like, well, what are you going to do with Jamey Carroll now? You got Tulo at short, Matsui, you got Helton over at third, Garrett Atkins, and where does he fit? And he was just that guy. Put me in whenever you need, wherever you need me, and he go and perform.
Yeah. Speaking of one of those situations, he hit his first career grand slam August 11th, 2007, as a pinch hitter against somebody we've mentioned here, Chicago Cubs pitcher Rich Hill. In 2007, hit his first career grand slam as a pinch hitter, and the Rockies went on. It was in the sixth inning. It was to break a 2-2 tie. Rockies went on to win 15-2, and Carroll went 1 for 2 with 2 runs and 5 runs batted in.
Nice.
In that game, and then about a month and a half later, he's hitting the game-winning sac fly to score Matt Holliday.
Nice. And looking at his career stats too, position-wise, yes, he played the most time at second base, then third base, shortstop, but he got a few games as an outfielder, and he pitched 1 inning with the Twins and has a 0
ERA.
a 0 ERA. So,
There you go.
That's something special.
Yeah.
If for me as if I was a position player, that's something that I would always hope that I got a chance to do. Like, I don't know. I'm a fan of the position pitchers going in. You get to see either some guys that just pump gas and you're like, oh, dang. But then you got those guys that throw the butterfly, the eephus pitches or the wannabe knuckleballs. I remember one position player that it was a legit floating knuckleball. And or you see the eephus and then you get dotted with an 80-mile-an-hour fastball. Or when they just get ripped and you're like, well, yeah, that's what would happen. But that's really cool. If I was a position player that pitched the 0 ERA, like, bam, that's a pretty cool thing.
Looking here, Jamey Carroll ended up effectively retired in 2015 when he joined the Pittsburgh Pirates as a special assistant to the GM in the front office. And he did that until 2022. So after 7 years, and then wasn't quite able to find what he's been up to nowadays. But that or just being a dad, probably coaching. Those guys all kind of end up doing the same kind of things. They continue to spread the knowledge while being dads or find other ventures type of things. But he does have a brother that was the head coach at Evansville. So the Evansville Purple Aces. So maybe he ended up helping out over there too.
And it seems like a lot of former Rockies had, those ties in to help out with the Pirates. And I'm pretty sure, the Clint Hurdle influence over there.
Well, there's the connection of Kyle Freeland also played for the Evansville Purple Aces in 2014, where Jamey Carroll was there in 1996 as an All-American. So
Nice.
it's all interconnected. And who was Kyle Freeland's head coach? Wes Carroll. So Jamey Carroll's brother was the head coach when he was there, or when Kyle Freeland's there. Interesting. It's all connected, one way or another. Yeah, but good on Jamey Carroll. Just a solid little role player. Had a very unique face. Not much else I can say.
Yeah, that's and his time with the Rockies was so short. But as we said, he did that. He had that one ball in play that sealed the deal to get into the playoffs that 2007 season, and we'll always be eternally grateful for Jamey Carroll.
Yeah, he's basically in that same book as Tony Walters in the 2018 wild card. He hit little Tony two bags, hits it up the middle for the little base knock, and Jamey Carroll, same type of thing, little base knock, or not the base knock, but slaps the ball in play, risky play, but it ends up being the difference maker. So they've etched their names in the record books and Rocky's immortality, much like Jamie Moyer, who is still very, very old. But I think that's going to do it here for this edition of Every Rockie Ever, the Jamey episode. 3 unique, different Jameys, each with different little career paths and stints with the Rockies, but all in their own way impactful in one way or another, for better or for worse, whatever it may be. They made names for themselves in Rockies history, whether it just be longevity, setting records, or immortal hits to create history. So it's cool to see just all these different paths that these guys could take and everything. But any last words you want to add here, Dustin?
No, just as always, we're looking at other suggestions. Who would you like us to cover? Who are some of those most memorable Rocky ever that you have, and share your memories of what makes these guys special. As we get talking, it might not be that they were the biggest name player, but somehow in some way they were special to you, and we'd like to have you share those thoughts and put them out there so we can give a little shout out to all of those players that have put on the purple pinstripes and make all of this possible.
And my goal is, I would love to get Clint Hurdle on here. And he's on the Twitters, or the X, or whatever it's called these days. Elon Musk's billions-dollar mistake. He's on there, and my goal is to get him. We would love it. Or any of these guys. If you're a former Rocky listening to this, follow us on Twitter, reach out to us. We'd love to have you on the show and talk to you and chat with you about your career with the Rockies. There's a couple, especially those guys Dustin mentioned, that may not have had the big bright careers, but were still solid members or had those stints with the Rockies, put on the purple pinstripes. They're part of the history, and we want to celebrate that 30-year history and shine a light on these guys that may not otherwise get it or may have never gotten it, type of thing. And that's the fun thing about this. But you can follow us on Twitter at Rocky MTN Rooftop, as well as at Every Rockie Ever. You can also find me at sideline_crowd on the Twitter X, and which sounds like a weird prescription drug. And then you can find us at Mr. T Spanish. School is in session, so can we expect more TikTok trash can kicks?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll start warming up the old Legarino.
Also got to get ready for your more Avalanche content since Cale Makar is the NHL 24 cover athlete.
Oh yeah.
Which, fun fact, Larry Walker's the only Rocky that's ever been a cover athlete. For I think it was All-Star Baseball on the 64 and Game Boy in like 97 or 98.
Nice.
Something like that. But anyways, Larry Walker will have his day. We'll talk about him eventually. But that'll do it here for this episode. Thanks, as always, for hopping along. You can find us on wherever you find your podcast. Feel free to leave us a 5-star review. Help support the show. Get it out there to help us grow it out. And also be sure to check out Affected by Altitude, our flagship podcast talking about the Rockies. We haven't had a couple of episodes. Past couple of weeks we've been busy, but we should have one this coming Monday as well. So fun stuff. Always things going on. But I've been Skyler. That's Dustin. This has been Every Rockie Ever. Until next time.
Goodbye.
And I realized I did the entire show with Affected by Altitude up there. And recording.